All right, fire the hard-hitting ones at me.
Jordan, I guess just to start off, what are you seeing from Carson Beck these last few games? The good, the bad, just what sort of stands out to you?
Yeah, I think a couple weeks ago I did a breakdown tape on how I thought he was pressing a little too much. Almost, I like to call it big play hunting. So trying to search for those big shots downfield when maybe there were easier options in the flats or check downs. That's really correctable. And Carson's such a good player, I think, because he knows how talented he is. He puts a lot of the offensive struggles as a whole on his back and tries to do it all. You just got to remind him, if you're Mike Bobo, that you don't have to do that. I know they've been struggling around him, but the more he takes off his plate, the more he distributes the ball, the better he's going to be. The problem was last week, couldn't block anybody at all. I mean, the one-on-ones were ridiculous. So if I'm this team and I'm forming this game plan for this week, I've heard a lot of offensive coordinators say this before, it's got to be protection over concept. Every time there's a third down, your first checklist when you're going through your play sheet should be, okay, how do I protect what they're going to show? And then what's the best concept out of that protection? Just too many opportunities last week to win one-on-ones on the left side, and even when they went 7-man pro, they couldn't block anybody either. So Carson's going to have to do what he does best, which is get the ball out of his hands quickly. But that's going to put a lot of pressure on Mike Bobo to dial up plays that get guys in space. That, to me, is going to be the chess match.
When you've got a run game that hasn't been at its best, just what are the things that you can do to avoid getting in those third downs that are obvious passing situations?
Yeah, it's got to be a lot of screens. And I think, honestly, though, unfortunately, you have to lean into the run game. Because, and here's why I say that, Tennessee's really good up front. I will say, though, on passing situations, they get really unique in the type of fronts, pressures, and presentation that they give you. A lot of times they'll walk everybody up. A lot of times they'll put 3 defensive linemen on one side and James Pierce on the other side. Sometimes those are really good looks to run into because they're expecting pass rush. Sometimes you can check into a lot of good runs out of that. So I think Carson's just going to have to do a really good job at the line of scrimmage, finding out what's the best way to attack. And a lot of times that's him checking to screenplays. You know, against Texas, I think it was, or maybe it was Bama. He checked cover 0 to Arian Smith, who wasn't there. That would have been a touchdown against cover 0. So he knows what he's supposed to do. I think it's going to be a lot on Carson getting them in the best play at the line of scrimmage, unfortunately, just because Tennessee is very unpredictable.
This game being a 7:30 night game, first home game in over a month, what kind of atmosphere do you expect in a game like this, and what kind of impact can it have?
I think it's going to be rowdy. I think it's going to be it's an elite place to play, right? You don't want to play here I played on the road here. It didn't go well for me. And they're going to be a lot louder against Tennessee. And I think why that's important, because Tennessee's really struggled to start. I think they had 3 games out of the last 4 where they didn't score in the first half. You can't do that against Georgia. If Tennessee comes out and plays slow, that's exactly what Georgia wants to happen. It's exactly what this crowd wants. They're going to get louder. And let's be honest, Tennessee hasn't been great on offense. They haven't. Nico has just played fine. He hasn't played great, I don't think, once this year. He made a couple throws against Bama late that helped him win, but he's missed more often than he's made the big plays. And so if that crowd starts going, and as a quarterback that gets in your head a little bit, I think you can kind of exaggerate some of those mistakes that maybe you hope he makes.
In terms of Kirby's message this week, obviously last week we heard Lane talk about that was a playoff game for them. Do you expect that kind of same message behind closed doors from Kirby?
I don't even know if Kirby has to do that. That's the thing. I mean, this is a team that they're so hyper aware of what each game means. They're so pre-programmed to not care about the bigger picture of stuff. And honestly, I'm not sure there's a better coach when you're doubted than Kirby, and his ability to put together a message and get his guys ticked off about something. And honestly, right now, that's kind of how everybody's forgetting about Georgia. And I think they're going to, I'm not going to reveal my pick too much, but I think they're going to remind some people who they are this week. In a lot of areas, defensively, but also offensively with Carson Beck. So I don't think the message needs to be over elaborate. I think his players know what's at stake, and I think they're ready for it.
Georgia's receivers lead the country in drops. Just as a quarterback, how do you not let that bog you down? Continue to try to trust those guys to go out there and make plays?
Yeah, it's tough. Not only I think the bigger picture, actually the bigger issue has actually been their route running and where they're at in space. I did a breakdown video on that a couple of weeks ago. There's been a handful at least of interceptions where the route was run 2 or 3 yards too long, or a receiver is in the wrong really vacancy in zone and Carson thinks he's going to turn out, he turns in, interception. There's been a lot of miscommunication. The drops as well, it makes a quarterback hesitate, and that's not good when you're playing the position, especially against a really good defense. Unfortunately, I think this is bigger picture. I think it's a little bit of it's almost like when a rookie quarterback ends his rookie deal and they sign him to that monster 6-figure contract, and now you spend less on the guys around you. I think there was a lot of confidence that Carson could make everybody else better around him. Didn't go after Isaiah Bond or Evan Stewart. Juice Wells in the portal. Felt like Carson could make the guys he had better, and it just hasn't been the case. I think the receiver room has let this team down quite a bit. Again, from a technical standpoint and from a playmaking standpoint. But as a quarterback, you have no choice. Like, if you start to doubt, you're never going to win these games. So Carson just has to honestly get behind closed doors with those guys and go, hey, I got your effing back. I'm going to keep firing them to you, and we're going to make some plays. Eventually, it's going to turn our way. And unfortunately, that's kind of the only thing you can do.
With Tennessee, running back Dylan Sampson, super productive year, even with Nico, not being healthy in the last game and even struggling a little bit through the course of the season. What has allowed him to have the season that he's had at Tennessee?
Well, I think he's unique in the fact that his vision is elite. I think a lot of times we get caught up in the physical intangibles, how big you are, how fast you are. He's got all those things. But when you flip on the tape, more often than not, he's finding like nooks and crannies. There's not big gaping holes. I don't think this Tennessee offensive line is as good as they were last year, or at least has played as well. There's not these big holes all the time. He's done a really good job of being patient and finding holes when they're not there, especially when kind of everybody knows that's what's coming. The threat of the deep ball is not what it used to be. So teams are playing down around the box a lot more, so he's had to be better, and his vision is as good as it gets.